Hello, DevOps people. Welcome to Full Stack Live. I'm back again after another longer break and I'm happy to be back again with a completely new setup. I've ditched the Mac. There is not a Mac running anymore on my desk at the moment, at least. And if you want, I'll tell you all about it. My break again did not have any huge reasons. I just was a bit swamped with work and just didn't have the energy to do live streams, even though I always come back to doing my live streams because I enjoy them so much, and so I'm happy to be back. Hey, Fudersnabel, how you doing? Welcome to Full Stack Live. Linux Desktop 2021, almost. So thing is, my setup here is now running on a Windows laptop, of all things. I guess it's pretty much pandemic related that I was feeling FOMO about new games that came out. I'm not a first-person gamer. I have been a decades-long World of Warcraft player, and I do enjoy a bit of Minecraft from time to time. And so there were games like Valheim, for example, that piqued my interest, where I could spend a bit of time, and I realized these games will probably never run on a Mac, but at least not for the time being. Simply because even my high-end iMac with an i9 processor and I guess the highest AMD graphic card that was available would not run anything like Valheim, also because Valheim is only available for Windows anyway. So I decided to get myself a gaming laptop with an NVIDIA RTX 2070, and so I could play these games. Also, I recently wanted to show my kids Commander Keen, and even that wasn't available for the Mac, and now I can simply install it from Steam. Of course, I also rationalized my decision by having curiosity about WSL2, because I heard a lot of good things about the Windows subsystem for Linux. And I also wanted to try out Linux again as a desktop operating system. I decided to not get a well-known brand. Instead, I chose a brand from Germany called XMG. They build gaming laptops from Chinese laptop chassis. They're called Tongfeng chassis. There are quite a number of companies all across the world who use these Tongfeng chassis to build their laptops, and a lot of YouTube reviews heaped a lot of praise on them, both the US-based electronics laptops as well as the XMG laptops here in Europe. So these were all things I was interested in: gaming, WSL, Windows in general, and Linux as a desktop operating system. Also, I realized that Docker started being really slow on my Mac. I had read about people having issues, but I never experienced them. But recently, working on my Rails application, I noticed that test runs would take minutes and minutes. And I also remember Rubocop taking 2 minutes to even start linting. But I thought that was a more of a Rails startup thing or so. but now running it on native Docker in WSL or even on Linux, I realize it's actually Docker for Mac with its file system integration that is really, really slow. So I got the laptop, I started using Windows and was surprised how user-friendly it has become. Things like window management, using the Windows key, snapping windows in the corners and things like that. All these things you had to install third-party applications on the Mac are already available in Windows out of the box. And so over the past 2 weeks, I guess, I really had to revise my stance on Windows. I'm really enjoying using it. WSL works really great. I'm using Ubuntu 20 in the Windows subsystem, and with recent Docker for Windows versions, Docker also runs inside WSL, so I have my little Linux enclave in there, and I can work with Vim as I'm going to do today. Yeah, I'm still shell-shocked how well this works and how little issues I had. I had to do a little bit of system tweaking in order to get my natural scrolling behavior back into my mouse, because that's not provided by Windows settings. It does offer natural scrolling for touchpads, but not for mice. So I had to do a little bit of registry tweaking, but that was nicely documented on the web and worked like a treat. Yeah. Fullest you right, actually struggle a bit on big Git repos. It seems to have some disk latency. WSL2 is supposed to fix it, so perhaps I've done something wrong. Okay. I don't have any experience with huge Git repositories by now. It's also hard to tell what counts as a huge Git repo. I'm going to use our chef cookbook repository later, which has quite a number of files in it. But I've never used Docker on Windows with that. We can give it a try and see how it behaves. But I'm pretty sure it'll still be faster than on the Mac, because the transition from the local Mac file system into the Docker VM that must be running and then into the containers seems to be really, really slow on the Mac. Yeah, so just for comparison, a full test run of my Rails application took, if I remember it right, 8 minutes. And even if it was just 5 minutes, it would be enormous, because it takes about 40 seconds on Linux or on Windows. Speaking of Linux, I also installed Linux. I found Pop OS, the Ubuntu variant that System 76 has built for their line of Linux desktops and laptops. I decided to use it not only because it is basically Ubuntu with a few tweaks. I also chose it because it comes with support for NVIDIA graphics cards out of the box. So I assumed it would work nicely, and I can report back that it does. Also, having the GNOME desktop with the grid-based window management is great. I enjoyed using Linux as well. And I guess I would have made Linux my main operating system if Windows hadn't worked so well so far. And being able to switch between, say, work stuff and game stuff without having to reboot just is a nice quality of life improvement. But still, I can see myself working from native Linux from time to time. In particular, with the NVIDIA graphics card switched off and simply working on the laptop when I'm out and about with the built-in internal Intel graphics. That should give me quite a few hours of battery time, and that seems like a nice alternative. I also find the GNOME desktop quite usable. I haven't used a Linux desktop in many, many years, and I'm quite surprised how well it works, and especially the new choice of package repositories is nice. Not only having the native Ubuntu package archive, but also having access to Flatpak and other alternatives is a great thing. So yeah, now I'm running OBS on Linux. It was quite easy to transfer everything over. I simply used Dropbox to have access to my stuff, and besides changing a few file system paths and things like that, migrating my stream setup over was quite straightforward. I had to find a new solution for audio routing, but Voicemeeter seems to work quite nicely as well. But there might be some more rough edges, and if you notice any, please let me know in chat. Okay, so that's for my monologue, for my catch-up. I want to make this thing a little bit more interactive, so pop into chat if you have something to share, or if you have any feedback, especially if it's about the stream not working as it's supposed to do. Well, what the NVIDIA graphics card also allows me to do is easily stream with 1080p, and so I chose to up my resolution a little bit. You still should be able to choose a lower resolution if you want. Most of the time Twitch allows the transcoding. So what are we up to today? At the moment, we are still busy upgrading our infrastructure, getting new operating systems on all of our more than 600 Linux hosts. That's ongoing and going ahead nicely. And in the meantime, we've also started preparing for even newer operating systems and getting rid of old code, which includes our old monitoring infrastructure. If you're running that many Linux hosts, you need to have some kind of monitoring in place. And of course, if you sell services based on this infrastructure, you also need to have someone on call who can take care of things going wrong. And so far, we've been using Sensu, and even in a few final places, we've been using Nagios, because back in 2010, when we started using Nagios. We've mostly replaced it with Sensu, but not completely. And the code that manages both our Nagios and Sensu setups has become very old. And instead of modernizing, we decided to, or instead of upgrading, we decided to replace it. For quite a few years, we've been now using Netdata on the side. Netdata is a monitoring solution that collects metrics and has a very nice way of displaying them. And so as a medium-term solution, we've decided to switch over completely to Netdata, even integrate Netdata with our PagerDuty alerting system. And that way we can use something we are already familiar with. We don't have to start completely from scratch. We are going to get metrics all across our infrastructure, and we'll be even able to alert on metrics, which is oftentimes much more sophisticated than alerting on simple health data. Of course, if a host is completely down. That's a simple case where you don't need any particular metrics. But being able to say alert if CPU load is greater than 90% for 2 minutes, something that is time and metrics based, of course, allows you a much more sophisticated kind of monitoring and alerting. And that's something I'm pretty excited to see in action. So this week I'm going to get deeper into Netdata, research how it works, how the latest versions have been improving on features and things like that, and also start implementing them in our infrastructure as code. And that's what I'm going to do on this stream today as well. If you have any experience, let me just add our more long-term idea about monitoring as well. If you've been on the stream before, you might have learned that I've also started running Kubernetes, mostly for our own websites, but also to learn more about scaling of services within Kubernetes. And I've started installing a Prometheus monitoring system in our Kubernetes cluster as well. At the moment, Prometheus is only collecting data from our small Kubernetes cluster, which runs with DigitalOcean and is managed by them as well. But seeing that Prometheus as a monitoring system running on Kubernetes will be easily scalable just because of Kubernetes, my long-term idea is to do monitoring of our complete infrastructure using Prometheus, also collecting all kinds of data from our hosts in Prometheus, and then maybe storing that in a time series database like InfluxDB, and being able to use Grafana to visualize the health of our infrastructure. However, at the moment, I don't have any particular experience using Prometheus. I have no idea how it scales in practice, and so that will be part of my live coding streams as well in the future, sometime eventually. But for the time being, we need something that works and that we can guarantee to be usable in our daily practice, and that's going to be Netdata. Okay, I've been talking for about 20 minutes now. Time to get cracking. However, there is one more thing. I'd like to do longer live streams, and on the other hand, I don't want to be sitting here for hours. So I need to take a few breaks in between to simply stretch and go somewhere or grab a new drink. And I'm going to use the Pomodoro method because that's a well-established way to switch between work and breaks. I've just installed a Pomodoro timer a few minutes ago, and it's already at 22 minutes, so I'll take my first break a little bit earlier now, simply a 5-minute break, and then I'll be back and we are going to get a bit into Netdata. Stay with me, I'll be right back. And here we are. Netdata. Monitor everything in real time for free. That's what I'm going to research today. Let me just restart my Pomodoro timer. Alrighty. So, here you can see how nicely Netdata displays system metrics with a nice meter for CPU load and gauges for network throughput and stuff like that. And the only downside you'll quickly run into is that Netdata runs on a single host and exposes these metrics for this host only. So you need to find a way to, if you run multiple hosts or many hosts, you need to find a way to get an aggregate to easily be able to access metrics from different hosts. And there are multiple ways to do that. For one, you can transfer Netdata metrics to a central host, and then simply use this host to watch your metrics and switch between machines. Or you can use Netdata Cloud, which is a product that Netdata as an organization offers for free. Let's take a look at Netdata Cloud. So what I've been talking about so far was the Netdata agent that runs on a single host and exposes a web server that you can access to see what's happening. And then there's Netdata Cloud, where you can register your agents and then see what's important there. And you can also create combined metrics, so you can correlate issues. For example, if you see a spike in CPU load, you can ask the Netdata Cloud dashboard to provide you with other metrics that spiked at the same time, and you might see that, for example, the number of web requests that came in suddenly had a burst, or a database had suddenly a lot more connections, things like that. So it's easier to learn about the reasons why your infrastructure is behaving strangely. And you can also get alarms and notifications about these behaviors. And looking into the configuration syntax, how you configure these alarms. Yesterday I was quite surprised how sophisticated this is. You can define aggregate metrics, for example, the number of web requests per minute. So that will provide you with a new data source that gives you a number containing or representing the number of web requests in the past minute. And then you can use this new metric to alert and say, okay, if the number of 500 errors within this last minute is more than 5%, then alert me. If the number of success codes, namely 200 and 300, is lower than 95%, then alert me. Things like that. And you can even add conditions. For example, use 95% if everything has been okay so far, but or 85% if everything has been okay, but if we are already in a warning state, then I'd like you to use 95% as the threshold. So only if things get really good again, I want to fall out of the warning status. Things like that are quite easy to do with Netdata, and that's why I'm excited to do even more with it than we already do. So, what I'd like to know is this still free? And what's the future for Netdata Cloud here? Let's take a look at the Netdata blog. Product. That's an interesting blog post as well. Actionable alerts with fewer false positives, intelligent alarms with Netdata. I think I'd like to read that later. So let's put it into Pocket. That's also an interesting article, why Netdata exposes the metrics dashboard by default. Okay, something else to read later. They say every metric every second across any environment for free. Okay. Let me see if my secret screen still works while I'm going to log in into Netdata Cloud. Nope, doesn't. Let's see. I think the file can't be found. So that's in overlays. I haven't fixed that yet. Let me just change this quite quick. Okay, that's better. Okay, here we are in Netdata Cloud. So, any information here? Getting alerts. Speaking of monitoring. Give me a second, I'll be right back. Okay, so let me take a look at my profile settings, notifications, no billing, anything. I guess, at least for the time being, we don't have to be afraid of any charges. Pretty sure there will be add-on features that will be monetized in some way eventually. But at the moment, it's all good. So the reason that we don't have any nodes here in what's called a war room, I'd call it, it's not a dashboard, because a war room seems to have multiple dashboards, which is interesting. So I'll have to think about the structure here. But the reason we don't have any nodes is you need to claim a node in the Netdata Cloud service, and that means you need to use a shared key that you get from Netdata Cloud, and then you need to initialize the Netdata agent on the host with this key, and then the node will be able to connect itself to a dashboard. Okay. And that's something that I'll have to build into our infrastructure as code, into our chef cookbooks, where we can simply add a key in our setup configuration, and then this key will be rolled out onto all our hosts, and these hosts then will register themselves with Netdata Cloud, populating this space quite quickly. So in the end, we'll have hundreds of Linux hosts in there that we need to somehow divide into war rooms and then into dashboards, which will be an interesting exercise in itself. But we'll see. So let's find documentation about claiming a node. Okay. So here we are, documentation, visit documentation. Netdata Cloud. Get started. You should have the open source Netdata monitoring agent installed. And yeah, I'll also have to take a look at how it's installed, because I think by now, where we have most of our infrastructure on a more recent operating system, we should be able to install Netdata from the package repository again. And then we need to sign up for Netdata Cloud. That's already happened. And then we claim our nodes. Connect any node using the agent cloud link. You can only claim any given node in a single space. You can, however, add that claimed node into multiple war rooms within that one space. Yeah, okay. And it seems to be based on a war room, even though it says we can add a claim node to multiple war rooms then. So we have to start with one war room. Not too thrilled about the language, war room. I know what they are referring to, but I think that's really unnecessary militaristic language. Hit enter. So they expect me to copy a script into each node's terminal, which I'm certainly not going to do. I might do that on a test-by-test basis, but certainly not for our whole infrastructure. And then it'll register itself. Okay. Alternatives and other operating systems. Docker, you can execute the claiming script as a Docker container. Yeah, that's not too practicable in our case. Without root privileges is not the problem. With a proxy, we don't have any proxy that we need to pass through. Okay. That's also an important aspect of Netdata. Netdata Cloud does not store or log metrics data from your nodes. And I think that's the key to offering this as a free product, because it's not like, say, Datadog, where the agent would transfer all metrics to the service provider, and therefore be a quite expensive product, especially in the case of Datadog. Instead, I think Netdata Cloud only provides a space for the metrics and graphs that are already running in the host's local agent interface, and exposes them as a nice dashboard or something like that. So most of the load will still be done by the host itself, where the Netdata agent runs, and Netdata Cloud only provides a nice package around it. That's at least how I understand things at the moment. We'll be able to try that out. So 2 things that I'd like to check is I'd like to check how we install Netdata at the moment. So let's take a look at our chef repository. And there is a Netdata Freestyle cookbook. And here the client recipe, which could also be named agent if we would use the specific terminology Netdata uses. And then... oh, that's only the client-specific stuff where we can actually stream our metrics to our central metrics host, which we do at the moment. But the default recipe actually does the installation. And I think at the moment we still use... no, we don't. We don't actually use the Netdata, the open source Netdata Chef cookbook in the background. Don't we at all? Let's take a look at our dependencies here. Yes, we do still depend on the Netdata cookbook in our Netdata-Freestyle cookbook, but not for the installation apparently. Instead, we actually configure the package cloud repository for Netdata and simply install the Netdata package, which is nice. Because that's what I wanted anyway. That will also allow us to easily upgrade Netdata agents. Okay. I see, and so we also have a server configuration here for the streaming target. Yeah, I see how this works. Okay, and the default recipe does what's common between the two. So I guess the Netdata cloud registration needs to happen in the client recipe. Good. I don't think I'm going to use the script that Netdata provides me with directly. Instead, I'm going to... well, I'm probably going to use the script, but we'll have to find out what changes the script does to the system so we can actually only run it once. These infrastructure as code approaches, and in this case we use Chef for automating our whole infrastructure, do one thing that's called idempotence, which means each of these actions here is only executed if necessary. The Chef client runs in periodically. In our case, it runs every 10 minutes. And I don't want to have a Netdata Cloud registration run every minute here, every 10 minutes. I just want to have it run when a new node spins up. Within the first 10 minutes, Chef should run and do the Netdata Cloud registration, and when that's done, we need to find a way to find out that it's done, and using this indicator, we'll then avoid running the registration a second or another time. So that's something I probably will have to test in on a host. I'll probably spin up a Linux host in a virtual machine on my machine here, and simply register that host. Could even use a test instance for that, and see how things work. But as I see, and as you can see in the lower right corner, my Pomodoro timer is almost finished, and that means it's time for another break. I'll be back in a few minutes. Hello again. All right, so I've just noticed that there aren't any stream messages anymore, chat messages anymore. Even the automated ones are missing. What's going on there? Let's take a look. Division by Zero, welcome to Full Stack Live. Hey Marcus, how are things? Let me see, does the uptime command still work? I think Stream Elements has been completely disconnected. Let's see. I think I'll have to research that. Somehow the chatbot integration has been lost. Maybe I shouldn't take long breaks anymore, but it's not that important at the moment. Let's get back to Netdata. So something that came to me during my break is if I start, for example, now registering test machines with Netdata, how do I get rid of these test machines after I dispose of them? And the interesting thing is that doesn't seem to be a way to get rid of machines. You can remove a node from a space simply by disabling the cloud integration on the host side by simply deleting the registration data. Deleting the cloud.d directory means the agent doesn't have credentials for the Netdata cloud anymore. And it says you will still be able to see this node in your wormholes in an unreachable state. Division by Zero says in a normal server they just expire. That would be the proper behavior, I guess, that after after a while they simply get removed if they stay unreachable for too long. And then we'll have the cloud.d token file. Yeah, okay. So that's actually the indicator we can use to see if a node has already been registered with Netdata Cloud. So we'll do that. So let's simply give it a try. I'll spin up a test node, a test client here. Let's see, that should be the client. Oh, interesting. This is the first time I'm using our cookbook repository on this machine.
I just want to go back.
I think it's probably a good idea to try and increase the font size here. Except I don't know how to do that. Let's find out. But we can find that, oh, we are missing a few things. Okay. So let's do these preliminary things. How to install Vagrant in WSL2. Well, there should be a package, shouldn't there? Vagrant. Ooh, lots of stuff. Okay. My shell is hard to read with my handsome face covering it. Well, we need to set priorities, don't we? Yeah, you're right. Let me fix that by simply getting my face out of the way. And so, a few packages, I guess. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah, so far I'm enjoying this. I like my new stream setup. CPU load is at 7%. What's different? Well, the stream setup runs on Windows and is supported by a beefy graphics card that can take the whole encoding, and so that's quite a difference. But other than that, I've pretty much actually cloned what I had on the Mac. Music is still playing from Pretzel Rocks. I'm still using OBS. I've actually copied over my whole OBS scene configuration and design and things like that. So on the surface, nothing much has changed, except that Stream Elements seems to have broken. But simply being able to work in Linux, WSL2 is actually Linux running as an application in Windows without any virtual machines or things like that, is quite nice. It's also quite quick. But let's find out how well our cookbook test environment here is going to run. I guess I'll also need VirtualBox here. Yeah, window title bars are a little bit covered by my stream design. Let me just pull this down. Now you can see from the lack of rounded edges that it's not macOS. That's one of the most noticeable differences, I'd say. That Windows look a little bit different. Other than that, I guess that's the advantage of running a mostly terminal-based workflow anyway. It was quite easy to get the Windows subsystem for Linux running here, cloning my dot files, and I was good to go. Okay, now let's see if we can actually see our test suite. Yes, we can. And let's run the client instance. Let's do a converge for the client. Ooh, we are missing a few plugins. Oh, Vagrant is unable to use the VirtualBox provider from the Windows subsystem for Linux without access to the Windows environment. Enabling this access must be done with caution and understanding of the implications. For more information, please refer to the Vagrant documentation. I mean, we can also quickly switch to Docker. Let me start that anyway, and I'll get the VirtualBox support done later. But yeah, I can imagine that this is a little bit of a back and forth between the subsystem and Windows itself. VirtualBox will probably not run natively inside the subsystem, and so we have Vagrant WSL enable Windows access. So the Vagrant home will then be in a Drive FS file system, which is shared between the Windows host system and the subsystem. Then we need to add that also to our path. And then it will be able to run a VirtualBox application that's installed on Windows instead of in Linux. Interesting. But then we'll get the whole Docker synced folders issue all over again. Not sure if I want to go that way. For the time being, let's simply spin up Docker here. And by simply setting a what's it called, an environment variable, Don't I have my caps lock on this keyboard? Okay. Then, okay, then it's local YAML, right? Score local underscore YAML. Docken.yaml. Okay, now we are Docker based, and by running tkc client, Test Kitchen should spin up in a Docker container now. And then we can log into this Docker container and try the manual registration from the shell. In the meantime, let's find out how to reclaim a node, because this Ubuntu client Ubuntu 16.04 host will probably try and register a few times. So remove and reclaim a node. To remove a node from your space, delete, yes. If you want to reclaim this node into a different space, you need to create a new identity by adding -id to the claiming script parameters. Make sure you have the uidgen runtime package installed, as it is used to run the command uidgen. Okay. So this time we would have to generate a new UUID. That's something that I also need to test. Okay, here we have a new test client running. Oh, it actually ran the second client installation as well. But that failed. Okay, that's not an issue though. We can actually destroy this one. Tiggerty client no key. Still interesting that it fails without a master host configured. Wonder how that's possible. This test should still run. Looks more like the test configuration is broken, but we'll have to look at that at a different time. So here we have the client converged with a TKS. I can get a shell inside the client Ubuntu 16.04. Okay, we should see Netdata running. Yep. So let's cd into Netdata. Okay, there is no cloud.d directory yet. So in order to connect this machine, I need to run this script. Sudo command not found. Well, it's not necessary anyway, so let's actually get rid of sudo here. So Connection tempo unsuccessful. Node was successfully claimed. And here we have our token machine. However, there's not much of information, I guess. But maybe it'll just take a minute or so to populate with data. At least don't get any error messages here. Is there a log that we can query? Yes, there is. There's the error log. And there actually is... Ah, I see. We've configured a master server, and of course that server cannot be reached. So that's something we need to change. Is that something that we've made mandatory? Yes. So we always set up a stream with the master host. I think that should be optional. What's the default attribute here? Master host empty string. So I would say unless master host empty, we should not set this up. And then we need a second test suite, one for masterless and one for streaming to an upstream master. So I guess we could simply do an only if or not if node Netdata FileStyle a master host empty. And oops, that should be in curly brackets. Okay, so yes, so far we always wanted to have a stream to a central server. It'll at least make testing or experimenting easier if I can also disable this. And I think being able to, or having these options is always a good thing. So we'll actually have to change our test configuration. Oh, we don't actually test this anyway. Let's see. Our client does set a master host and a master API key here. And we can simply get rid of that. Since we actually do not test this anyway, yet at least, if I read this right. Yeah, for the time being I can simply take this out of our configuration here. That should not make any difference. Okay, time for another break. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so I've spun up my test instance again, and in the meantime my registered node here has become unreachable. The new node does not have any Netdata Cloud configuration yet. Yep, there's no cloud.d directory yet, and so let's try another claim here. Let's run this. Again, no sudo command. In a bare Docker container. Node was successfully claimed, so there should be another Docker instance now. And here we go, and here we already get a little bit of information. Let's see. You see that it's Linux on a hypervisor. It's still no metrics. Might take a few minutes to actually collect metrics. Let's take another look at the error log. It still tries to send to master host. How's that possible? I thought I'd removed that. I'm confused. I mean, we can always delete the stream configuration. That not if should actually have prevented that from being set up. How is that possible? We don't have any default attributes in the client test suite anymore. And since the default value for the master host attribute is empty string. Oh! Why am I testing blank? What even is blank? Should have used empty. No, I did use empty. Should I have used blank? I think empty is okay. Blank might only be a Rails predicate. That's strange. Let's see. There is a stream conf where it says stream to host master. That's strange. Let's get rid of that, just for the time being. Service Netdata? Is it Netdata or Netdata agent? Apparently it's Netdata. Okay. Can't find JQ. It tries a few Docker shenanigans here. Not sure why. It might try to collect metrics for Docker itself because it notices the Docker environment. Yeah, that's the cgroup network plugin here that seems to try a few things. Should not impede normal operation. Still no metrics. Can I access the dashboard locally? Curl localhost 19999. Access to file is not permitted. var lib netdata. Strange. I would have expected to see this working out of the box. So we should take a closer look at the logs. So, what about the debug log? There's nothing in there. Error log has these C group issues. Can always disable the C group login if that's blocking things. And then there's the access log. Okay. Maybe I need to disable the C group plugin to see this running properly. I think that's all controlled by the netdata.conf file. So let's find out. Grab C group. Did I no? Nothing in custom plugins. Exegete.io, hey, how you doing? Welcome. Nice to see you. Okay, so guess we should do a there's no C group definition at all. Let's see, what is actually in netdata.conf? Oh, nothing, not much. Memory non-doc. Host name is docken. Oh, web is not enabled. I would assume that needs to be enabled too. Windows Live is treating me nicely, to be honest, and I'm still shocked that that's the case. To put it bluntly, I'm not missing the Mac at all at the moment. Okay, so that's the reason why we didn't have web access. Let's see if this... Where's my curl command? Nope, still no file access permitted. Netdata. Fresh config file from the package might make sense. So, are we writing our own Netdata conf? I assume we do. Okay. Not in this recipe. That's the global configuration, I assume. There is a memory mode none and host name is host. Yeah. So that's based on the Netdata cookbook. A Perl error? I don't think so. It might look similar to a Perl error though. Yes, here we see. Oh yeah, okay. We force web health registry backend and statsd to be disabled. Oh, interesting. So these chef resources here, Netdata config, only collect parts of the information that in the end then gets written to the Netdata config file. That's the global part, and then we have the web health registry backend and statsd parts. Which ends up being this one, global web health registry backend and statsd. Nice. Ah. Okay. I'll have a look into the Netdata cookbook later because I'm really curious how they managed to do that. To run multiple resources like this and then finally write out the full config file. Anyways, so we have two strange behaviors. We still get a stream configuration even though master host should be empty. How does the word master get into there then anyway? We don't have any templates that say that, so apparently it still gets passed to this resource. Not if node master host is empty, and it should be empty. But apparently it's not, because master gets written into the host name. So that's strange. I mean, I can force that. Okay. So this is a case where this cookbook was built with a very, very narrow scope and focus, where we want a minimal configuration, but a stream configuration in any case. And I guess now I need to make this cookbook a little bit more flexible So we can actually disable the stream configuration to a central host, but I should also be able to enable the web and maybe even health sections here. And I should also I just noticed, Marcus, you wrote that's what I wanted. Not sure what you're referring to. Let me know what exactly you wanted. Execute asks, I may have missed this somewhere. Are you no longer doing Kubernetes? Yes, but not only. And at the moment, I'm researching Netdata as a monitoring system, because for our existing infrastructure, which is not yet Kubernetes based and will not be for quite a while, we need a modern monitoring system. We've already been using Nagios and Sensu, but both these setups are quite long in the tooth, and so I'm aiming at making Netdata our central monitoring solution for the medium term. In the long term, we might actually change to Prometheus if Prometheus can do everything we need, which I assume, and Prometheus will be easily scalable because it's running in a Kubernetes cluster already. But since we don't have any experience running a large infrastructure monitored by Prometheus, and it'll be a lot of work integrating our infrastructure, which is not Kubernetes based, with a Prometheus setup that is Kubernetes based. We'll have to have service discovery and all these kinds of things. That's a long-term project. And for the shorter term, I'd like to use Netdata. And that's why I'm dissecting our chef cookbook for Netdata and researching how Netdata Cloud integrates with the Netdata agent and things like that. Oh, you did want a narrow and focused Netdata implementation, as I said. Yeah, that's all too understandable. Now that we are extending the scope a little bit, we need to extend the cookbook a bit. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. At the current Netdata cookbook, the one we use is old. Okay. Execute writes, that makes sense. I went entirely Datadog for monitoring, logging, etc. That's a convenient solution, but it's also a very expensive solution. And I'm really afraid of the running cost of having hundreds of hosts monitored and logged and stuff by Datadog. We actually tried that once and quickly ended this experiment again. So, doesn't explain why we don't see any metrics at all here, though. Naughty Nunu, hey, what a great name. How you doing? What do we use for monitoring? So far, we've been using, back in 2010, we started with using Nagios, which was sufficient for a few hosts that we were running. When we scaled to multiple hundreds of hosts, we mostly replaced Nagios with Sensu, which has been working fine, but our setup has aged a lot. And instead of modernizing everything, I thought it would be easier to simply focus on Netdata, and that's why I'm dabbling with it at the moment. And look at that, Stream Elements is back in chat. For some reason, it rediscovered our stream and joined us without any doing on my side. And Exegete writes, it only really worked, so referring back to Datadog, really worked when Kubernetes took us from about 25 hosts to 3. Yeah, if everything becomes a container on just a handful of worker nodes, that might work much better. I'm not I wouldn't say I'm making my own monitoring solution, because we'll still use something that's on the market, in this case on the open source market. Yes, what I'm not going to do is use a paid service as our monitoring system, a service like Datadog, because it simply would almost immediately kill our budget. We are specialized in high-performance web hosting, and we are running more than 600 Linux hosts at the moment. I can't imagine what that would cost to be monitored for by Datadog. It would definitely be a 4-figure sum, if not a 5-figure sum per month. CreatureNex, hello, welcome to Full Stack Live, welcome back, I'm back. First time in a few weeks again that I'm streaming. I hope, I really, really want to be more regular in streaming, but yeah. Density on these 600 hosts, they're mostly not compartmentalized. Well, they are. They are LXC hosts, so they are virtual in that regard. So the number of physical hosts is lower, running Datadog only on the actual physical hosts would be less expensive, of course. However, it would be a lot of work integrating Datadog with our containers, which are LXC based, and that's something that I'm also not seeing as practical. CreatureNex asks, how am I doing? I'm doing great. I'm happy to be back again on stream. Everything is going fine. Ireland is doing pretty well dealing with the pandemic. Of course, there can always be, it could always be better, but I can see myself getting a vaccine shortly, within the next few weeks, and everything is running smoothly at the moment, both on a personal and on a professional level. And yeah. Only thing is, I keep struggling with launching my stream. For some reason, I often don't feel like I have the energy. And I hope I'll be able to get back into a more regular schedule. I really, really do. Exegete asked about density in terms of substantial percentage of CPU RAM. That's definitely varying, but since we are running very demanding websites that get lots of traffic, they are often quite nicely loaded, where I can be very definite is with our database clusters. These machines do tens of thousands of queries per second if necessary, so they are pretty much running on high load all the time, and they're built for that. Yeah, it can be varying. Of course, for example, if we lose a customer and we take their machines off from our VM hosts, density is reduced a little bit, but we've also been switching to a purely cloud and API-based approach using Hetzner Cloud, which is similar to DigitalOcean, I'd say. It's a German-based service, and that would also mean we'd have to monitor each and every of these hosts because we don't have access to the underlying provisioning system. Naughty Nuno writes, our business uses way more RAM than CPUs, we found. How is that in our case? I'd say web servers use more CPU than RAM. And databases use both. You want to have your database dataset in RAM as much as possible. So that's why we have really big machines there with 64 or 128 gigabytes of RAM. And our web hosts are mostly CPU bound, I'd say, because you have a thread per web request, per concurrent web request, and that mostly uses CPU. We also have to reserve RAM because we are specialized in running Drupal and WordPress as content management systems, both based on PHP, and so we have to reserve a certain amount of RAM per web worker process. But I'd say the web application servers per se are more CPU bound than RAM bound. Cached using Redis. Yeah, we also use Redis. We also have caching proxies based on Varnish in front of our application servers, and these are purely RAM bound. They don't consume almost any CPU because Varnish is so efficient. But yeah. Okay, so where are we? We are due for another break, and I guess I'll continue until 2 o'clock, so for another Pomodoro round. And so I'll see you for the last and final round for today in just a short minute. Last round for today. Okay. By the way, I'm trying streaming in 1080p, and it should work okay, both from performance standpoint and from my bandwidth, but I saw a red light here, and so if you experience low quality on the stream, please let me know in chat, and I'll see what I can do. Alrighty, where were we? Netdata configuration. So for some reason... Thanks for the feedback, Marcus. Definitely more readable. Okay, that's good to know. Couple dropouts when viewing in 1080p. Right, Naughty Nunu. Okay. Buffering. At the moment, Twitch says connection excellent, so we should be good. Maybe it was just a short drop in connectivity. And 720p works fine. It might even be a Twitch problem on Twitch side. So, no node data at all. I guess we'll need to experiment a little bit with our test machine here, because I don't even know what these different sections here mean in terms of health or registry. We don't need the stats.d functionality at the moment, that I'm sure, but the other stuff, let's find out what that even means. But still, yeah, let's get this working first. And Marcus wrote earlier, I should actually try and take a look at the latest Netdata cookbook. I'm actually not sure why we don't use the latest one. Which one are we using? We are using Netdata I. We should be using something recent, at least. I'm not sure what the most recent Netdata cookbook is, actually. We are at 04, so that's actually the latest one. Which might just be the case that it's not maintained anymore actively. 17 months was 17 months ago was the latest change, so it might not actually be well maintained anymore, and you might have to either fork or replace it. Wait, what? You're on the Be Right Back screen? Should not be. That's confusing. Yeah, I can see myself as well. On Twitch. So, I'm not actually sure why you see the BRB screen. That is strange. See you later, division by 0. Bye bye, Marcus. Okay, so let me take a look at the Netdata configuration documentation. Netdata conf is the main configuration file. Daemon config doc. Web to configure the web server. That's something I'd like to see. And we then do system control, restart Netdata. Maybe we should try that first. So system control, restart Netdata. I've switched my split keyboard back to QWERTY, and my brain finally also switched. I had been writing Colmac with my split keyboards even after switching them the layout back, because my brain simply had switched mode already. But now I'm getting proficient on my split keyboards again as well. Okay, so let me see. So netdata conf. Web enabled, yes. Okay. Let's take a look at web server configuration. With web mode equals none, we can disable it. I guess that needs to be changed in our cookbook as well. And if we want to enable it, we might have to actually set these settings. Let's do it step by step then. Tabs, huh? What does system control say about the status of Netdata anyway? Let's take a look at everything. Active, running. Okay. So let's try another curl then. Still says access to file is not permitted. Oh wait, it tries to access var netdata ww index html. And if I recall correctly, Netdata is running as the Netdata user. So maybe we are running into a simple file system permissions issue? Oh, we are running in... Oh, no, it's var lib netdata. Okay. Okay, that stuff belongs to Netdata except the www directory. Why is that owned by root? Does our cookbook do any shenanigans there? Let's try and fix that. It's all owned by root. Still, let's try another curl. Still, index.html is not accessible either. And index.html is owned by root, but it's world readable. Yeah, the error message comes from the built-in web server built into Netdata, because I'm simply using curl. I'm not sure if there are any headers that come with it. We can check that. It says forbidden. Let's take a look at the whole path here. Starting with Netdata. Netdata is world readable. The www directory as well. And index.html is world readable as well. Execute writes, I wonder why the URL is so heavily encoded. Yeah, the slashes are encoded. But that might simply be how the web server that's built into Netdata works, I guess. It might simply URL encode these things. I'm pretty sure that's a Go library or something, a whole embeddable web server. Can't imagine they built their own. That must be available. And I can access the web server. It just does not have any file access here. So strange. Do I have to use these access lists here? I mean, that's probably the default setting here. Except Netdata conf, I guess. But let's use that and modify it a little bit. So here we are. What I would like to have is Netdata conf from localhost. Wait, not Control D. Shift D. Management from localhost, streaming from anywhere. Well, yeah. Okay, badges from anywhere. Dashboard, I guess. Only localhost and connection. Well, for the time being, localhost and star, because I want to let Netdata Cloud connect as well. But at least for our curl, this should be sufficient. Okay, well, same thing. It's just that I've enabled the headers. I mean, if I take this literally, it says access to file is not permitted. Do I... Let's try and... Okay, I can't turn into Netdata because Netdata doesn't have a shell, I assume. It's not a permissions issue. What's totally confusing me is that this doesn't work out of the box, because that is the actual cookbook we use in production, and our nodes definitely collect metrics and even stream them to our central metrics host. So I actually don't know what's not working here. It might actually be that we are running in Docker. And the slightly different system layout in Docker might impact this. So I guess I should also try and get VirtualBox running here on my Windows machine and try and spin up my test machine in VirtualBox in a more real Linux environment that is more similar to our hosts. Maybe it's just about this, even though I don't think it's likely, but I also can't say it's impossible. Let's learn about the other sections, though. Okay, web is the web server. How about the health monitoring section? Netdata agent is a health watchdog. Okay. Oh, I can see. That's actually health checks. So that's building upon the metrics collection. When you want to actually interpret the metrics and teach Netdata which metrics or which metric values are healthy and which aren't, then you need this health section. That's not something I'm interested in at this point. What is the Netdata registry? Distributed monitoring. Traditional monitoring solutions centralize all the data. Before Netdata, this was standard practice. However, Netdata follows a different approach. Data collection happens per second. Thousands of metrics per server are collected. Data does not leave the server where they are collected. Netdata servers do not talk to each other, and your browser connects all the Netdata servers. I see. Using Netdata, your monitoring infrastructure is embedded on each server, limiting significant need of additional resources. Actually, reading this makes me question if we even need to stream our metrics to a central host, even though this host still can take a lot more traffic. But maybe we've been using Netdata not properly, or the registry came after we started using Netdata and we simply didn't know about this feature. So I'll have to look into this as well. Allows Netdata to provide unified cross-server dashboards without having to centralize everything. That's definitely interesting. And it's only the web browser that talks to this registry. It sounds like a very clever solution, but I don't think it's related to my current issue as well. Backend is streaming and replication options, okay. Why the fuck can't I access web interface here? Is it because I'm using localhost? Don't tell me it's an IPv6 issue. Nope. Okay, I guess it's time to try and Google this. Netdata access to file not permitted. My last session is running out and I actually am getting hungry. Naughty Nunu asks if I checked the file permissions. Yes, I did. I actually even SU'd into the Netdata user, and I was able to easily access the index.html file. I was also able to read it. So it's not actually a file permissions issue, I think. So Netdata access to file is not permitted. Access to file is not permitted. It feels so good to be able to write QWERTY again. Okay, there is an issue. Don't tell me it's a bug. Okay, change the permissions of this directory. Should be owned by user, Netdata, and group. It refuses to serve files with wrong permissions, even if it has access to them. User and group required is controlled by Netdata, conf options, web files owner, and web files group. What the actual F? Maybe it's because... No. That's really strange. This probably means your Netdata runs as root now. See? And that's probably the issue. Are we running Netdata as root? Maybe I should follow the suggestion that my colleague Marcus gave me earlier and get a pristine Netdata conf, because this might be actually an issue of not running the a good configuration, and running it in Docker where it might actually run as root is also possible. Let's try and figure out what our actual Netdata is. So if I go to Netdata and request netdata.conf, see, is that? Yeah, that's the fully parsed configuration. Run as user Netdata is commented out. Not sure what the default is, or if that is the default. But even if it's the default, our web directory is definitely owned by the wrong user. Let's see, what else do we have? It says web files owner Netdata, web files group Netdata, and that seems to be the default. That's why it's commented out here. WordTSK, welcome to Full Stack Live. Hi, how you doing? Right, by the way, you can force UID without having a shell on the account, sudo -u netdata. Yes, and also use the -H option here. However, I did not even have sudo, or I do not even have sudo installed on this Docker container at the moment, and I was simply too lazy to install it. But you're perfectly right. Yeah, that's another option. So I guess we'll try, even though my timer is off and I'll definitely have to get lunch soon. I'll simply go ahead and change ownerships. Let's do that. Change Netdata web. It's user lib. That's also strange. Why is it user share and not user lib? Because it's not there. Was it user share? No, wasn't either. Oh, now I'm getting completely confused. What the what? Var lib netdata. It does try var lib netdata, right? Yeah, okay. So it's not user share. Why is it var lib? The user share sounds much more likely. What's going on? Oh, these are symlinks. Okay. Or are they? No, they're not. And now it's netdata. Why do I get... Something is really strange now. Oh, it's www, not web. Okay. Okay, let's do a restart. I just noticed, Naughty Nunu, thank you. It's www, not web. So there is some discrepancy. I'm not sure what... I mean, the issue here is from 2016, so I guess we are now on a more current version. Now let's see what curl tells us. Yep, now it works. Okay. In this case, it's actually the software itself that is very picky. As I said, I was even able to confirm that the Netdata user does have physical access to the files. However, there seems to be additional logic built into here, where if I've configured Netdata to use the Netdata user, and it finds that the files aren't owned by the Netdata user, it will not serve them, even if it has access to them. I guess that's part of the security philosophy of Netdata. That they say, okay, if someone tries to access something that is not owned by the Netdata user, the Netdata user is probably not supposed to be reading this file, and especially not surfing it over the web. And that does make sense, and I do like that. I'm simply confused that our setup, which I haven't changed on my test infrastructure here, and which we are running in production, does not work. But that's something I'll have to look into at a later time, because I'm really feeling the need for food. As always, useful error message errors would help. Yeah, you are perfectly right. In this case, being told your file might be accessible, but it's not owned by the proper user, which would have helped me find this much easier. Okay, friends. It's not only time for a 15-minute break, it's actually time for lunch. Thanks for dropping by. Again, I'm very happy to be back on Twitch, and I intend to do another stream on Thursday, but I've said this before and didn't hold my promise. Yeah. I aspire to be back on Thursday at the same time, 11 a.m. Irish time, and I would love for you to join me back on Thursday when I get deeper into this. Or maybe I'll be able to tell you the resolution of this strange thing. Okay, so if you like, join me on Discord as well. I'll post the URL to the chat. And we'll be able to continue chatting over there. If not, I hope to see you soon. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for chatting. It's been a lot of fun. And have a great rest of your day. Cheers.